guys, welcome back to our channel. The weather is just breaking here in Zone 6A, so I figured I'd kind of give you guys a quick tour of our yard prior to all the plantings and all the beautiful greenery that's going to come up. So I'm going to take you around the yard and show you everything we have to work with for when we're ready to plant. To start, we have our regular garden area where we have built raised garden beds out of pallet wood, and we've linseed oiled them and capped them, and this is where we are going to do a lot of our planting and direct sowing. And I'm going to take you in and show you what I've already planted so far. So over here we have broccoli that we direct sowed, I'd say about 3 weeks ago, and you can probably see that they're already starting to come up pretty decently in just a couple of weeks. So even stuff such as this yard decor, I purchase things that eventually become rusty, old, worn down, the paint fades off. So I bring it into my house, and a winter project of mine is to repaint pretty much anything that's getting dingy for next year's garden. And I can go ahead and put a couple pictures of some of the things that I've repainted in there. So here I just had an extra bin laying around, and I figured why waste garden space. So I put a cabbage seed in there, and that is also germinating. So we will see. I've never grown cabbage before, but I'm pretty excited about it. And then in these 3 big raised beds, I have put some seeds directly into the ground for zucchini and spaghetti squash. They've not come up yet, but I've spaced them far enough apart to where I can put some in between as, you know, throughout the season, so I can have continuous zucchini and spaghetti squash. So over here in these raised flower beds, this year I'm going to be putting cucumbers in this one. Last year we had tomatoes, and they say it's good to alternate for the, I guess, the richness of the soil. So I have them all going to be climbing on trellises of some sort. I don't like them laying on the ground where the leaves are constantly touching the soil, but I didn't have the best of luck with the trellises last year, so I'm hoping this year it will be different. They're not going to be in the same direct sunlight constantly, so we'll see what happens with this. And then over here, I'm going to be doing tomatoes, which again, I have the cages for the tomatoes, but I also have these poles, and I tie them up as they grow, and then I continue to trim them because the indeterminate ones get so tall. I mean, they will take over. They're huge. So I just kind of like to prop them up so they're not all flumping all over to the ground. So we'll see. We'll do like a couple tours throughout the season, and then again towards the end, so you can see how it flourishes out here. In the garden, I have this cabinetry that I keep all of my garden tools in, just from my sun hats to my clips, gloves, fertilizers, pots, anything I could possibly need in the garden, I keep outside just so it's very easily accessible. And I mean, we even have our winter blankets in here for them. So this is where I keep all my tools. And now I will take you to the side of the house. So on the side of our house, we also have 2 lowered raised garden beds that I'm this year going to be putting peas and beans in this one. And I have direct sowed some peas along the back sides of my trellises because I do want to grow on trellises. And then maybe in the next couple weeks, I'm going to put another row up front. So I again have the alternating harvest coming in all summer long. And as soon as we're done with our last frost, these are all going to be full of green beans. I don't do pole beans, I do bush beans. Number 1, so I don't have to have stuff for them to grow on, like more trellis stuff. And number 2, I just like the flavor of bush beans much better. They're smaller, and I'll alternate rows. I'll plant every couple feet a row, and then a few weeks after that, I'll come alternate the planting rows. So I again have continuous crops coming up throughout the summer. And then over here, I do the same thing with the lettuce and the spinach. So on this side we have lettuce, and I have planted 2 rows of lettuce. I'm probably going to have to go through and start plucking some of these out because they shouldn't be growing that close to one another. But then in a couple weeks, I'll come and I'll grow 2 more rows here. So we have continuous lettuce throughout the season. These big things are weeds. They're not spinach. But I did do the same thing with the spinach. So as you can see, it's kind of within 3 weeks or so of planting seeds into the ground, with or without frost, it does not matter. These are considered like colder crops. They can start early. You can even plant them into the fall. You can even do winter lettuce as long as there's like a glass covering on top. So they're pretty hardy when it comes to weather. So I'm going to be doing my alternate crops in a couple weeks here. And then on the side of the house in the front, we have a little cherry tree, like a bush tree. It was one of my free gifts in my Gurney's orders, so I got it. Didn't really think it was going to thrive, but it's doing good. I have got a few buds, but it's been a couple years at this point, so I'm not sure what it's going to do. But either way, if I can plant some food in my yard and it looks beautiful, I'm definitely going to do it. So that's the side of the house, and now we'll take you around the back perimeter of our backyard. So over here between our shed and our fence line, since we don't like to have any space in our yard really go unused that's not going to grow food or even just beautiful flowers, we built this nice U-shaped raised flower bed. And in one side of it we have carrots, which I direct sowed the seeds into the ground. They are just starting to pop up. Here we have an onion bulb set, which is starting to come up, and I've never really had too much luck with onions before, so I'm pretty stoked about this. We have onions here as well. Behind me, we have garlic, which I bought a bulb of garlic. I ripped them all apart. I just stuck them in the ground, and they are all thriving, and each little garlic clove is turning into its own garlic plant behind me. And then here we have potatoes, which I basically let have kind of rot and grow eyes in my house throughout the winter, and I chopped them up and I put them in here, and we have about 7 coming up so far. And then in the back corners behind me, I'm just going to put some sweetie tomato plants or something right here, just to not have any unused space. So in a couple of weeks or maybe a month, when this is getting a little bit more filled, I will come to a little shot. There's a lot of work to do here. We have all of this is going to be filled with pea gravel. The kids made us these beautiful stepping stones made out of cement and dollar store gems, which was the most fun experiment ever to do with a group of kids. Their friends came over and we made a bunch of random stepping stones in dollar store pie tray containers. We took plates from the dollar store and cracked them in a big, huge bag. And we took pieces of plate and we stuck them in there. I mean, it was a very, very fun thing to do. So if you're ever looking for a really cheap and fun project with your children that can also benefit your yard, that is a really good idea to do. So now we can go and do the rest of the yard. So over here on the side of our shed, again, with trying to utilize every space in the yard, my amazing husband built me this rod holder that holds the chains to hold up these pots. And this is where we grow all of our fresh herbs. So I have all of them starting in the house right now in a seed cell tray, and I'm getting ready to transplant them. But all summer long, whenever you need thyme or chives or whatever it may be, you come out, clip it off. It's the best way to take up no space for herbs because they can get pretty big. So if you don't want them taking over your yard like peppermint and some do, this is the best way to just maintain fresh herbs throughout the entire summer. So over here we have asparagus, and this is kind of a new territory to me. I planted them 2 summers ago at this point, and I know a lot of them say you don't really want to harvest until the 3rd year. And so now that we're on our 3rd year, I'm kind of scared to harvest because I feel like when I cut them down, my entire plant's going to be gone. But this is where we're at. We have 3 asparagus plants over here, and one that I thought was dead is actually just starting to come back to life right now. So we had 3, we're down to 1, but this is my little asparagus experiment. We'll see how it goes. It's, again, unknown territory for me. So over here on the back fence line, we start off with our strawberries. And to protect the strawberries from all the little critters and birds and bunnies, I put a netting system over them, and I drooped the netting over these pots that I painted red, and I put a heavy rock on top that I painted green. I was trying to mimic the look of a strawberry, but in a cutesy way to hold down that netting. We have a lot to go in the springtime right now. We've got weeds and leaves stuck to everywhere and just a lot to do. But so far, I mean, we're thriving, we're blooming. I'm getting buds on all of my fruit plants. Over here we have a blackberry tree, And last year, these stems, I guess, these branches were about 15 feet growing on both sides. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna take over my entire yard. So I ended up cutting them down, and now we have a thriving tree again, and all of the buds are actually starting. They're hard to see, they're super small, but I think I might have to eventually trellis this because it's very viney. Over here we have another cherry. We actually have two more cherry trees. They're dwarfed cherry trees, so they're gonna be like between the size of a bush and a tree. I've only had them for a couple years. I am not seeing any fruit growing off of them yet, but on the one behind me, I actually saw a bunch of buds a couple weeks ago, so I'm thinking maybe this is gonna be the year for me to get some cherries. And then in the back corner, we have a grape trellis, and again, I just planted these a couple years ago. I did get like 15 little clusters of grapes last year. They were very small, but I'm thinking maybe this year I'll get more. I'm not sure. I'm new to the whole grape thing as well. So that is that. So this is the other cherry bush that I have going. It's obviously much bigger. So I think they're probably different types of cherry bushes. I don't really know the names of them, if I'm being honest. I just know that they were perfect size for my yard, so I got them. Behind us, we are in the middle of, we built a raspberry trellis, and we stained it last year. The stain completely wore off, so I was in the midst of starting to restain it, ran out of stain, so it's kind of a project in the works. But this is the raspberries. I started with 2 raspberry plants, and they are regrowing themselves. So they're re-rooting sprouts into the ground, which is pretty important to have to cut those down at the end of the year, or else they will take over your entire yard. They will swarm out the plants around them. So I'm got lots of pop-ups of new raspberry plants, which I'll monitor. And then now we can go towards the back of the house. So as I'm sure you can see, this beautiful pink piece of art in our yard, which is an amazing, amazing thing to add beauty to the yard, but it has a purpose. So we actually use it, the Chevy S10 front end, and we use it as our storage, which is very cluttered right now. Again, we've got a lot of spring cleaning to do. We keep our pool stuff in there, or maybe our outdoor toys when the kids were little. Just pretty much it's extra storage in our yard. And at night, we have it on a solar panel. So the headlights and the fog lights actually light up. It's an amazing talking point. Everyone always has questions about it. So for a very, very cheap way to have storage, and you can beautify it. We've repainted this like 4 different colors at this point. So whenever we're sick of one color, we repaint it, and it just kind of changes the vibe of the yard. So that is a storage bin. And then next to it, we actually have another grape set, which for the longest time I thought was green grapes, because I'm not a fan of anything other than green grapes, but they turned out to be red or purple, and they have seeds in them, which I'm also not a huge fan of. But since all the nutrients is in the seed, I'm like, well, I'll try eating this. And it kind of just feels like a chia seed. So it's, yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna rip it out because I don't like it, but I'm also not gonna go make wine with it. So we'll see what happens with it. And on the sides of the grapes, just because there's free space that's not being used, I'm gonna find something to plant there throughout the summer, maybe some peas to climb up the fence line, or just something that is gonna help fulfill this area and give us more food. Now, in the pots on the back of our patio, we painted them red, and we grow strawberries in them. They still have all of their mulch and leaves that we put on there to protect them in the winter time, but they are starting to come back. And just a tip, if you're concerned about birds coming and eating your strawberries, throughout the winter time, you want to take some rocks, just find some random rocks and paint them red, keep them in there. So the birds will come and peck at these thinking they're strawberries. So by the time your strawberries are in full bloom, the birds kind of leave them alone because they've been taught that they're just rocks. So we have 2 pots of strawberries on the back patio. And I also got these from the dollar store. So for $1, $1.25 should I say. They have holes in the bottom you can pop through. We just fill them with dirt. You can stack them as high as you want to. You can put them on wheels. You can do whatever you want with them. But the best part about this is that it takes up no space. If you are in an apartment and you want to do some balcony growing, or even in your house in like a very sunny area, you can plant herbs, strawberries, anything that can kind of doesn't require a very big space. So I got 6 of these actually. I'm not sure what I'm planting in them yet, but they are not going to waste. I don't waste any dirt, any pots. Everything gets something growing in it. So I have, on both sides of my patio, we have one of these. So over here, directly outside of our family room, again, I don't really like any space going unused, so I planted 2 blueberry plants, and I'm not sure exactly how much sun they get. I had an app on my phone, but they seem to be thriving pretty well, and I've got tons of blooms on them. Last year, the birds came and ate all my blueberries. So on the brighter side of it all, at least something's getting fed from them. But we'll see how these turn out this year. They've grown probably like a foot each year since I've had them. They're about 2.5 feet tall. I got them about this big. So we'll see what happens. And just a quick side note, if you are looking for like a really cheap and fun way to mark your vegetables and fruits in your garden, find some rocks and have your kids just paint the rocks. And mine kind of all faded off at this point, but I will have my kids redo them. They just paint them the color of the fruit or vegetable that's going to be growing. And for Mother's Day, they wrote the tomato and tried to draw a little picture of a tomato on the rock. And you just set it next to the plant that's growing. And it's just a super fun and inexpensive way that involves your kids. Get your kids out in the garden with you to mark your vegetables. I mean, I've got lots of ways that I do it. I've got the waterproof, I guess it's like a paint marker. We've got all kinds of different marking ways. I've got pink plastic and white plastic, but if you want to incorporate your children, that's a really, really fun thing to have them do. So here's a little planter box that we created. It was just some scrap wood we had extra laying around. So Steve created this, and you can actually see a small construction clip of this in a short that we're going to release. But we built this, we stained it, we filled it with dirt, and we are gonna probably plant some tomatoes growing out of here because I feel like something a little taller coming out would be cute, like a tomato cage. And I think I might even paint that a fun color just for like a little bit of pizzazz for the back patio. So here we have a kumquat tree that grows in my house throughout the entire winter. And then as soon as the temps reach nothing lower than 55, we bring it out for the summer. But this is a little tree that gets to be between 6 and 7 feet tall, and it produces small little oranges where you eat the skin. They're like seedless and they're not super bitter. The skin is the best part of it. So I'm attempting to grow it. And we had a bunch of greenery that for some reason we lost this past winter, but I'm hoping that maybe like the natural sun is going to bring it back to life. But I will show you when we get inside to the herbs where this sits throughout the winter. It appears as if Steve has a little summer project going on of his own. Looks like he is painting the side trim of my car. We're getting everything ready for these summer months. So this little area right here, right inside my front door, is where we generally keep the kumquat throughout the winter. And I kind of try to move it around to chase the beam of light that comes through my front window. And if not, then I'll put like a grow light on it here and there throughout the winter just to make sure it's getting what it needs. And of course, since we can't have a video without our dogs, these are puzzles from Amazon. They were like $10, and I put them together, and they are also great talking points. Everyone that comes over mentions these puzzles of the pups. So I forgot to mention outside that I do plant marigolds or some sort of beautifying flower around my raised flower beds in them, or I'll put pots next to them with flowers. Because as much as we're all scared of bees, we definitely need them for the pollination for our fruits and vegetables. So be sure to plant something to draw in the bees, the butterflies, anything that can pollinate for you. And not to mention, everything you're growing food-wise is pretty much green the entire time. So it's a really amazing way to bring in the bees and beautify your garden with a lot of color while growing fruits and vegetables. So in the front window inside, I have a little miniature herb garden that I try to grow stuff throughout the winter, which seems to be the best time for me to grow it for some reason. It must be the lighting. But I actually just recently pulled out all of my existing plants and started new seeds. So they're just starting to come up now. Every couple of years, you kind of want to just start fresh. Keep them trimmed down, it helps them grow bigger. And then this little tray is the seed starting tray that I have for the outdoor herbs that grow on the side of the shed on that rod. So I'm getting ready to harden these off and transplant those soon. And then I have a peppermint plant that I started from seed, which is totally thriving. So I'm probably going to start chopping this down, dehydrating it, using it to steep in teas and whatnot, maybe even a good old mojito. And then the last thing I have is ginger, which I did not think was going to take off, but 75% of what I planted started growing these big, large plants. So again, I'm not quite sure what to do with it once it's in full-fledged, but this is another experiment I have going on this year. So I hope that something in this video inspires you or encourages you to, even if you have a small space or you live in an apartment even, that something in here could encourage you to grow your own food, or at least just have the knowledge to do it. So even if you don't want to do it right now, if there's ever a day you do want to or feel like you have to, you kind of know what to do. I will go ahead and do a tour throughout midsummer and then again at the end of the summer come fall to show you the progress as to how big these plants get, how much food I'm getting off of them. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. And on that note, cheers.